In Middle Ages, of course, that was not even close that beautiful as now. I never thought that you can live with the remains of first Roman emperor and be in comfort. And it turns out that was a building of Inquisition, and it also had some long-term consequences, how the architecture can dissolve in nature. But that is something incredibly interesting. So the best place to begin your trip in Rome is to start with Piazza del Popolo. That was the main entrance to the city of Rome, and the most historic main entrance. Here was the beginning of the road called Via Flaminia. That was the road to north and one of the most important roads. And people coming from north, they would, of course, go to Rome through those gates. In Middle Ages, of course, that was not even close that beautiful as now. That is more a Baroque renovation, because Rome went an important place, a center of all Christianity. Of course, they wanted to make the main entrance to Rome as a great beginning, as a great place to begin. So that's the right thing. Looks familiar, yeah? There is an Anglican church of All Saints, and yes, that is obviously not that old, because can you imagine an Anglican church, all those heretics, at the central of Catholic religion in Middle Ages or in new times? And while exploring all this religious side of Rome, you will of course notice some differences, how Catholic Church decided to change their approach. And basically, this Anglican Church is a sign that Catholic Church went a bit more soft on different religious. And the Spanish Steps, of course, filled by tourists. You probably know that that is named after the Spanish embassy, which people consider the first embassy in the world. And you probably know about this fountain that people destroyed. Rome gave 5 million euros for the restoration, and the Netherlands, they decided to give nothing. That was a huge scandal, but we don't have to talk about this. By the way, this fountain was made by Bernini, not this Bernini, the father of exactly this Bernini, in 16th century, because of the huge flood in Rome. But the most interesting thing about it, I believe, is that from this point on this hill, you can see all this beauty of Rome, because Rome is really high city. It has 5 or 6 floor houses, and exactly here you can see tops of churches and all this highest point of Rome, which is much more romantic as for me. And those stairs are much older than the Spanish stairs. So before the Spanish stairs were built, people used those to get on this hill. Oh yeah, and that is this famous Spanish embassy, by the way. And this building is called Villa Medici. What can I tell you about Medici? That was a really powerful, large family of bankers. I may be wrong here, but I believe they originated in Florence. They spread their power, and basically their money allowed them to build such buildings not only in Rome but all across Italy. And this building is really interesting. At the end you can read the Propaganda Fide, which basically means propaganda of the faith. And it turns out that was a building of Inquisition. Of course, they cannot call them Inquisition anymore. That would be not really great, because we all know the history. So they renamed the building and this organization, but the structure still stands here. Rome is sometimes too much. You can get tired so quickly. So I decided that I should rest and go inside of some church. I saw the first one on my way. I went inside, and of course it is beautiful, filled with golden figures, all those altar pieces. It's great to see. But the thing that was interesting for me is that there is an altar piece dedicated to King Olaf from Norway. That's because that king gave some money to build this church, and it also had some long-term consequences because now there is a place for Norwegian migrants and pilgrims. But the structure we came here for is located behind the church, and that is Mausoleum of Augustus. Of course, the emperor is buried in here, as well as people that were close to him or important during his rulage. But there is one more story that I think is pretty interesting. There was a family called Colonna in the Middle Ages, and they rebuilt this structure to a fortress, and yeah, they lived in there. There was even a part of St. Angela Castle. But then the family was banished from the city, and then fortifications went useless. Now they have some kind of construction in here. I don't think you can get inside. That was kind of interesting for me because I never thought that you can leave with the remains of first Roman emperor and be in comfort. Yeah, the Tiber River. It's kind of lame that we don't have this connection between the city and the river. That is a common thing in German cities, but in large cities like Rome, they just kind of separate themselves from the river. For obvious reasons. There's also this Gothic church. I wonder what that is. Oh, this fucker loves attention. Look at him. He wants your food. He wants everything from you. And his brother. They understand everything. Understand everything. Oh, and Piazza Navona, of course. Everyone knows that that was a Roman stadium. The interesting part is that the shape of the stadium is still visible here, but I believe the most interesting part is this fountain in the middle. It's called Fontana dei Quattro Fiumi, I hope I pronounced this right, and it is dedicated to four main rivers in Europe. It was designed in 1651 by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. And what I like about this, it tells us the story how the architecture can dissolve in nature. And I heard in some video that basically that was the style of Bernini to play with nature and architectural relationship. If you will have 3 minutes walk from the Palazzo, you will see this wonderful church. It may seem not really special compared to others, but that is something incredibly interesting. Because in this church you can see 3 paintings from really famous Italian artists. He was a master of showing you how the light will work with the composition. Before I came to those, I tried to look to another paintings, and yes, it is really hard because you see the difference and how paintings from Caravaggio are much more beautiful compared to others. His name comes from the village where he was born. Originally, he was called Michelangelo, but they already had one in Rome, so he got this second name. If you read about his history, you'll find out that he was a bit aggressive. He always broke the law, and the state always had problems with him. His friends helped him to get out of trouble, but he was always that kind of man. But maybe this freedom granted him some interesting perspective, so his art was genius, was special compared to other artists. Anyway, all those three paintings are located inside the church, so you can walk inside, it's totally free, and compare them to all other paintings inside the church.